Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susanna Swiswiki. Coming up,
There are significant trade ties as well with Australia and New Zealand.
moderate growth projected for the Pacific. Also,
Whatever tariff the U.S. has to pay will inevitably be passed on to Guam.
Guam's place among the trade wars, and Tokelau navigates its trifecta of issues. Economic growth in the Pacific is projected to moderate to 3.9% in 2025 and 3.6% in 2026. According to the latest Asian Development Outlook, the ADB's flagship economic publication released this week. The outlook anticipates easing in tourism, an economic driver in the Pacific. But while the economies in the Pacific are resilient, faster and larger than expected changes in US trade and economic policies pose risks. I spoke with Kara Tinil, a Pacific economist from the Asian Development Bank, and began by asking her what are the key findings from the outlook.
Well, this year's outlook, we do see that there is going to be some continued moderation in growth. From 4.7 in 2023, it moderated to 4.2 in 2024, and the main story for this ADO is that we're expecting growth to continue moderating slightly over the next couple of years. So this year in 2026, that's largely due to easing in tourism. That's as you know, that is a huge growth driver in Fiji, which is the second largest economy among ADB's Pacific developing member countries, and a number of other economies in the Pacific as well, such as Cook Islands and Samoa. So that is one factor, and another is that Papua New Guinea, the sub-region's largest economy, is also helping to drive. It's contributing to this overall outlook as well. In that petroleum production is expected to moderate over the short term, and that's going to affect, of course, growth in Papua New Guinea, which um it's a significant factor in the overall Pacific growth story.
Hey, I know that the forecast for this outlook was done prior to the announcements of the new tariffs
Yes,
by the US,
yes, it
but
was.
given the reaction that we're seeing from Pacific nations recently, what's your perspective of these tariffs and how will it affect growth in the Pacific?
Well, the US is a trading partner for a number of our Pacific developing member countries. But it's there are significant trade ties as well with Australia and New Zealand, of course, which I think is helping to mitigate the risk that is posed by the prospect of these higher tariffs. So that is a plus for sure. Uh, I also know that these tariffs they're subject to further negotiation, I believe. So there is some scope for further clarification and with the US. So the outcome is still it's still evolving as we speak. So ADB, of course, is continuing to monitor that situation very closely. We do think, though, that the more significant impact of these higher tariffs might be on the growth prospects of our major trading partners. So that would include Australia, New Zealand, as well as, the People's Republic of China. So any significant shifts like this would, of course, have implications for the growth policies of these countries on which the US has imposed tariffs, which might lessen their demand for Pacific exports to these countries. So that's one of the ways that these tariff changes could affect the broader subregion as a whole. But as I said, it's of course still a developing situation, and ADB is continuing to monitor this closely, as well as we're also standing by, of course, to continue supporting our developing member countries to address any development challenges that may arise.
It's believed that Fiji will be hit hardest with these tariffs. Is that something that you agree with?
We do know from our statistics that I think the US is a significant trading partner for Fiji. Official data does show that I think the last official data that we have is that the US is almost a third. It accounts for almost a third of Fiji's total exports, and a significant amount of that I think would be mineral water, which is a major export product for Fiji. So um that does have serious implications, direct implications for Fiji's growth, but uh given that this situation is still, it's still new and there is room for further discussion, further negotiation. We'll stand by and see first how things go, and then of course be prepared to take action as needed.
What are the other external shocks that the Pacific is at risk of?
Oh, well, besides, this shocks to external partners that would affect the countries themselves. Um, Another one, of course, is the ever-present risks from climate change and disasters. So, uh, we saw that there was an earthquake in Vanuatu late last year that did affect, uh, you know, it does have serious implications on their growth outlook. And of course, every year there are cyclones that affect the country, and on the other end of the spectrum there are droughts that might also affect. Both of them would affect, of course, the availability of food and water, and disruptions to supply chains as well. So besides directly impacting economic output in countries that are affected, it could also affect the costs of locally produced and also imported products as well. And that would affect, of course, inflation.
So now that we have this new outlook for this year,
Mhm.
what happens now? What's ADB's role in promoting growth in the region?
Thank you. Yes, so ADB, of course, is a long-standing development partner with the Pacific. We do continue to offer support across a broad range of sectors. So, of course, there is support for health and education, which would contribute to building human capital in these countries. That would, of course, im improve the quality of the workforce, that would enable them to better service tourists, for example, that visit the country, or if they have opportunities to find employment abroad, that these social interventions would help prepare them for that as well. At the same time, on the infrastructure side, of course, work continues on uh, developing power connectivity, road connectivity, marine connectivity, of course, as well, given the significance of marine waterways in the Pacific. So these things would, of course, help facilitate movements of goods and persons within countries, between countries, within the Pacific as a whole. And help promote economic activity in the areas where these projects are being conducted. And further, there is also significant support on the public sector management side. So ADB continues to work closely with Pacific governments to um, help manage expenditure, help manage debt, to help reduce, fiscal constraints, and free up more government resources so that the government could also better deliver uh, social services to their populations, and broaden the coverage of these services as well, within their countries.
Guam's unique tax situation could see it becoming a transshipping hub that avoids tariffs, but a former Guam delegate to the US Congress doesn't expect it to last long. Robert Underwood also says the territory is bracing itself for higher inflation and less tourists. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
Guam sits outside of the US customs zone. It means imported items into Guam are exempt from the tariffs that are being implemented in the 50 states. But being a US territory, Guam has avoided a tariff of its own. Robert Underwood says it could be seen as a loophole.
That can be used as a way to move products into Guam to avoid tariffs, but if they then decide to transship them to the U.S., and that becomes a vehicle to avoid tariffs, I predict that the U.S. government will shut that down.
He says although it seems like an opportunity, he expects it will end shortly if it's exploited.
There are always entrepreneurial types who try to figure out that maybe there's an angle they can play. But every time this angle has been played and it doesn't benefit the U.S. government comes in and clamps down on that.
The cost of living is already high in Guam, and Mr. Underwood says the tariffs will make it worse.
Since we get most of our products from the U.S., whatever tariffs the U.S. has to pay will inevitably be passed on to Guam. And that includes, of course, produce and finished products. And so much of our produce actually in Guam comes from Mexico via the U.S.
He says Guam will see a similar effect to Canadian tourism numbers dropping dramatically in the United States as a result of the trade war.
There should be some concern on Guam that as a result of these tariffs, there might be reduced travel from Japan and South Korea to American places.
Mr. Underwood says, like the rest of the world, the tariffs will be highly disruptive.
A Tokelau government spokesperson is concerned that the US is not placing resources in the right places. Augustino Vitale says the New Zealand territory has been hit twice by the US, given 10% in Trump's tariffs while waiting for around $4.2 million in a US tuna fishing levy. Mr. Vitale told Lydia Lewis he's not impressed.
It may have been because Tokelau is on the list of countries on the map, and then it was just added to their list without any serious thought, of any reciprocal tariffs or any damage that Tokelau does to America, from its less than 1,500 people.
And what has the community reaction been?
Laughing. I think people are not taking it seriously. I know that some local friend of mine that actually posted it, take a mock out of naming Tokelau as a threat to America's economy. In terms of we don't have any exports, so there's no implication in terms of any tariffs.
Tokelau was hit with a 10% tariff. What has it been like watching other Pacific neighbours being hit much harder?
Yes. Well, I'm very surprised to know we are small Pacific Island countries. And I'm not quite sure what the threat is from. I'm finding it really difficult to understand what the threat to the U.S. economy there is in the Pacific. Yeah, we're kind of saddened because it's the most important things to assist Tokelau, being a very small nation, that they're actually withholding, but they're more worried about the tariffs that they should actually collect from Tokelau, when they should have actually, if they understood what Tokelau is, the size in terms of its infrastructure and it's just its unique, place in the world. I would have thought that they would have been more keen. $4 million to them is that a lot of money, versus trying to, think more on the tariffs at 10%.
So energy in the wrong places?
I think so. Yeah, I think that is the correct interpretation of what they're trying to do.
And on top of the tariff, Tokelau hasn't been paid its tuna fishing levy by the US. And I understand New Zealand is stepping in to pay that as an advance.
Well, New Zealand has agreed on an advance, and they because we're a territory of New Zealand, all the negotiations are actually carried out by New Zealand, and they keep us posted in terms of what our share is of the tuna treaty. Unfortunately, it has actually been clouded in. Do you know how the U.S., the new administration, actually reviewing all their U.S. aid? This is considered as part of their package. Because it's a few $1 million that's coming to the Pacific, and Tokelau's share of that is approximately 4.2 million, which is a lot of money, US that is, which is a lot of money in turn. I mean, that's about 7 million if you think about the 1,500 people and the smallness of our country. It's a lot. So I was really grateful that New Zealand had actually come to the party in providing in advance just to hold us until the money is actually paid over. And then, of course, it's in advance, so it's a payback arrangement. Our understanding from New Zealand is that this review is continuing until the end of April, and then we will then know what's going to happen. As you're aware, there are all other type of aids, not only to the Pacific, but also to other countries that US has relationship with.
Does this put a dampener on not only the government of Tokelau's relationship with the US, but the perception of the people?
I tell you what, we had a really challenging time during the March General Whanau because the budget committee sat first to review Tokelau's budget. And it was just sad, the difficulty in actually trying to meet the aspirations of the people of Tokelau. And we were not able to because we had a shortfall in the fisheries revenue and some of the other revenue that we actually estimated we will receive. And that made it really difficult. The villagers were crying out for, some money to continue their development and also in the departments as well. At the end of the day, we had to actually take a cut through all sectors, including villages, of 2.5%, and that was it was really sad. I saw the struggle in the members of Parliament or the General Whanau members, in really debating the issue and how to actually get to the end of the financial, because we had to survive at the end of the financial year. Because any, overspend, of course, we would have to balance out in the new financial year. So we're going to be, shortfall into the future. So having delay in some of that funding is not useful. Perception of the US, I mean, we don't have a lot of, apart from the tuna treaty, I think that's the only. But that's, of course, with New Zealand in terms of our relationship.
Mr. Vitale says some of the solutions that have been put into play as a result are no travel, no recruitment, looking at having a 4-day week in some roles, which means people will miss out on a 5th-day salary, and workers taking on extra tasks to compensate for a lack of staff. They're also cutting internet use despite just getting a very expensive internet cable. That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tōwha Soifua.